It's June, it's summertime, and that's one reason, along with a hell of a lot of work, as to why I hadn't actually watched that many films this month. Although I did see a few, so stick with me because there are a few decent ones in here. But yeah, let's get right into it. First up in June was another Daniel Radcliffe classic, and that was Imperium, a film about a nebbish loner FBI agent who gets picked to do undercover stuff as a neo-Nazi, trying to root out the possibility of there being serious badness about to go down by a bunch of white nationalists, and only skinhead Harry Potter can stop it. And most of this movie is kind of exactly what you'd expect if you've ever seen Donnie Brasco or The Departed or The Wire or Black Klansman or anything else about somebody undercover. And I'll say this, Radcliffe, as ever, is great in this. He often doesn't have a huge amount to work with, and the script swings from wildly dull to predictable, but then has random sections of being really involving and really interesting. But I'll give this 3 out of 5. It's a competent film. The dialogue and the plot is a little on the nose and kind of basic, but yeah, it's forgettable but never annoying or offensive, and yeah, it's always worth checking out Radcliffe to see what he's up to these days. Next up on Friday Film Night was Snowpiercer, which I'd already seen, but never mind. Anyway, this wee gem was from Bong Joon-ho, the maker of Parasite, that Oscar-winning masterpiece, and this is set on a futuristic dystopian giant train called Snowpiercer, riding around the world in a glacial frozen future, keeping everybody alive because...
What happens if the engine stops? We all freeze and die.
Yeah, and it turns out that Captain America is the only one who can lead a revolt successfully from the very rear of the train where all the poor people live, several thousand cars forward to the front where the rich people are, in a journey that legitimately should take him days but seems to happen in about an hour and a half. And this is all a big metaphor for class struggle, which, to be honest, the movie High Rise did a hell of a lot better, setting up a similar situation in a tall building in kind of retro-futuristic England. Anyway, Snowpiercer is great fun. It's very silly, it's absolutely bonkers to look at and beautifully shot, but really odd considering it's a South Korean film made from a French comic made by an American market. And the making of it is in some ways even more interesting than the film itself. But yeah, it's a 3 out of 5 for me because it gets kind of lost in its own bonkers whimsy, and because despite a terrible first season, the Snowpiercer TV show is actually more fun to watch than this, mainly because Sean Bean is absolutely great in it. So yeah, maybe check that one out as well. And another movie that was a visual joy, if a little hampered elsewhere, was House of Gucci. Now, this is a Ridley Scott historical dramatisation of the rise, a bit more than before and sort of slight fall from where it was to a bit below before it came back up again, of the leatherware and clothes company giant Gucci, charting the times from when Patrizia Reggiani, played by Lady Gaga, when she meets, seduces and ends up marrying Maurizio Gucci, who's the heir to the Gucci fortune. Now, this is a visual splendour as you'd expect from Scott. The cast are fabulous, and indeed fabuloso in their over-the-top campiness, none more than Jared Leto, who walks off with the entire movie in an inch of latex and a half-bald wig. And true, most of the accents, Leto aside bizarrely, are kind of wobbly, with frequent slips back into everyone's natural Yank or British brogues, but the film is basically a hell of a lot of fun, camp, silly peering into the past and the ridiculous lives of these Italian mega rich and famous people. But I'm going to give it 3 out of 5, because it's not quite as good as All the Money in the World, which was a much better film, and this feels a lot like that film's spiritual, younger, dafter sibling, but it's clear that between the pair of films than that and Gladiator and Hannibal, that Ridley Scott really loves filming in Italy, and if nothing else, you definitely get your eyeballs worth in this movie, even if the plot itself is, interesting, but nothing special. Now, I know it's been a while, but I did actually manage to see a horror film this month, and that was the classic What Lies Beneath. Now, this little horror movie stars Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer as this rich academic American married couple who've just had their kid fly the nest, leaving them with the house to themselves. And Pfeiffer almost immediately starts noticing weirdness afoot, strange noises, moving objects, crazy actions from new neighbours across the road. But is it a serial killer? Is that ghosty? Is she mad? Is something actually going on? Well, I'm not going to tell you because a lot of the fun of this film is watching her act a bit quirky, reacting to spooky and some funny things that happen between the tense, scary sequences of horror. Now, I'm also going to give this 3 out of 5 because despite the credible pedigree of the actors and also with Robert Zemeckis directing, and he brings all of his sort of usual tricks and sneaky wee effects into things that you would expect from the guy who made films like, The Frighteners and Forrest Gump. The problem is that in the film, Pfeiffer comes across as fairly unbelievable and basically acts kind of nuts for most of the movie, and when revelations towards the end do start piling up and inevitably you realise that she's probably not the problem, then it all gets a bit too silly and way over the top too fast. But that said, it is fun, it's quite a traditional horror story, and it's a good entertaining time, so definitely one to check out if you haven't seen it yet. And despite being very busy, I did make it to the cinema with a bit more gusto than in the last few months, and the first movie I made it to see was Doctor Strange 2, or Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, I actually really liked the first Doctor Strange film. I thought it was a fun and different Marvel movie with Bumbleswitch Randabatch genuinely feeling a bit different in the role from his usual stuff, and not also it being a usual Friday night fist fight ending with, sky beams and all the usual nonsense. And it's been quite a few years since that came out, and in the other movies, he's sort of become a side character in other people's films ever since, so it's kind of disappointing that this isn't really a Doctor Strange movie at all. It's far more just a conclusion to the TV show WandaVision, which I did a whole series on, if you remember, and didn't like very much. It's also the introduction of a new character who frankly was almost completely devoid of personality and utterly unremarkable in every other way. It's a 2 out of 5, sadly. And ultimately, this does have a few fun moments. I mean, it's directed by Sam Raimi, who made the Evil Dead movies and also the original Spider-Man trilogy that people really like. And it's him using a lot of his old tricks and in fact sometimes literally stealing whole shots from the Spider-Man movies here. But there is also a bunch of cute cameo fan service in this. It's fun, but it feels like it squanders years of anticipation of what was left over from the previous movie and all the Doctor Strange comics, and also thus further proving that the MCU is fast running out of steam and really just piling itself up to be every film an advert for the next product. Later I saw Pixar's Lightyear, which is the movie all about Buzz Lightyear from the Toy Story movies. Now, but instead of him being a toy, this is the movie about the fictional character that the toy is based on, who ends up stuck on a hostile planet with a colony spaceship and this crackpot theory to get hyperdrive fuel working by testing it on a space fighter. Only every time he does a test flight it takes 4 years because of speed and gravity and science and interstellar type stuff, and anyway, due to reasons, Buzz has to fight off robots, evil bad Zurg, and learn to work with others in your typical Saturday morning cartoon level plot, which is actually surprisingly dull and flat for a Pixar movie. So yeah, 2 out of 5 for this, because this kind of melange of ideas from better sci-fi films just wasn't very interesting. I mean, or even up to the level of other Pixar films. It felt like a cash-in, but without the fun or the wit you'd want or expect. And yeah, there are callbacks to other movies, and in fact, I found myself actually thinking of the movie Ad Astra a lot, which is not a great movie, but I found myself wanting to watch that more than this during the film I was watching, which is never a good sign. And I'm really not sure who this is for, because it's too dark and complex for wee kids and kind of facile and dumb for teenagers or adults. So, skip it. Watch Toy Story 2 again. And lastly for June was a 1987 movie called Wings of Desire, or to give it its original German title, The Heavens Over Berlin, which is all about a pair of angels wandering around Berlin one day, listening to the thoughts of random people and ruminating poetically about the nature of existence, when one of them starts to fall in love with the idea of being alive, and with a woman that he's noticed, and also just dreaming of the mundanity of existence. And if you found any of that sounds a little bit familiar, you may have seen the American film City of Angels with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, which is kind of a romantic movie about an angel walking around in a long coat listening to people's thoughts and then falls in love with a woman. And yeah, that film's inspired by Wings of Desire, and it's okay. I mean, it's a bit schmaltzy and daft, but the original is way, way better. But it's also very much an existential art house movie that wants to take its time and express a lot of thoughts about the nature of life and the ever-changing facets of existence. And 4 out of 5, because I like art house films, and it's beautiful, captivating, and has this amazing self-aware turn with Peter Falk playing himself, and Bruno Kirby, who, the guy from the Hitler meme as the main angel, showing that he honestly was a brilliant actor. And yeah, it was a great movie to end the month on. So that was June, and here we are at the break of the year with everything going colder and more downhill from here. Weather-wise and temperature-wise at least. And yeah, that was a pretty decent month, as I said, considering I was busy working almost every single day, but that's the way it goes. And I can already say that July is actually shaping up to be an even busier month in terms of films, so yeah, I'm going to get back into doing more reviews, getting more stuff done. I've got a little bit of time off this month, so hopefully I'll actually get done on a few things, and there's a couple of series that I actually want to get finished up on, and then we'll see where the channel goes from there. So till next time, thanks for coming here to hear about my grumpy opinions.